Hello, everyone. Great to be live with you. Well, today, Donald Trump says that the Associated Press lied about his visit with Kanye West. People like to call him Ye now. Trump says that the Associated Press made up sources. The hallowed and sacred Associated Press making stuff up. So, we're going to look at what Trump says and what the AP says. Of course, we got to address what Kanye said today on Alex Jones about Hitler. And I've got to dive back into the election showdown in Arizona, find out what is really going on with vote counting there. And we have got to address Wisconsin, the most bombshell anomalies flying under the radar there. What is being uncovered in regards to Wisconsin needs to be addressed nationwide. I am shocked that so few people are talking about this. So before we jump all the way into it, check in your comments. Thanks everyone for the love. You're saying you bet that I could get Ye in for an interview. You know, I don't know if I'm as hot as Kamala Harris. Kanye has a thing for Kamala. According to his own statements on Drink Champs, he thinks she's sexy. So I don't know if I fit the Kamala genre, so he might not pay attention to me. Okay, before we get into it, shout out the sponsor of my coverage. 2022 has shown us what might be coming. So if you're fed up with everything being so expensive and the threat of recession hanging over us, it is time to take action. A precious metal IRA uses tax advantaged gold and silver to keep inflation at bay and give you the protection from financial nightmares. And you'll get a stunning 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with your open qualifying IRA account this month. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold Investments. Call 877-646-5347 to find out more or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Link down in description. Remember, there's always a risk of loss, and past performance is not indicative of future results. But guys, let me tell you, over the eons, currencies have risen and fallen. How long will the US dollar last? But one thing that has always lasted is gold. That's all I can say. So I'm thrilled to have Noble Gold as a sponsor of my show. I had their CEO on my show, and he is a really dope guy. Checking your comments. Hit the like button, people. That's right. Like, subscribe, and send me a super chat. All that really helps my coverage right now in this economy. Katie Hobbs filing lawsuit. Oh yeah, we're about to get into that for sure. No conflict of interest to be seen there. All right, so let's look at what Trump said about the Associated Press today. He is claiming that, the outlet that all of us journalists from J School worship, AP, they would never lie, right? I mean, that's what we are taught. And this is an interesting thing about the AP is they are syndicated throughout the media. So no matter what news outlet you work for, you're usually getting something from the Associated Press funneling to you. TV news anchors read a lot of the scripts they read on teleprompter are actually written by the Associated Press. So whatever the Associated Press is putting out has profound impact because it is voiced then just rehashed by media outlets across the nation. I mean, the outlets I used to work at, because I spent 9 years in corporate news, so I can attest to this. My people in the newsroom, no matter what newsroom I was working in, and I worked in 4 corporate newsrooms for years, copy and paste what the AP says. So anyway, now Trump's saying the AP lied. Let's look what Trump said. The quote, he wrote this today on True Social, quote, "The story in AP written by the untalented and very unreliable Jill Colvin, who I unfortunately got to know at the White House, is fake news. We have very strong security, especially with the extremely talented Secret Service agents on premises. But when I know someone, as I did Ye, we're not going to have my guests strip searched, thrown against the wall, and otherwise physically beaten. The anonymous sources don't exist. Stories to the contrary are fake news," all caps. So Trump calling out the AP for making up fake sources. And now we're going to look at what the AP said Checking more comments. Wow, thanks for the super chat. GT earns. That means a lot. You said, quote, you should interview Millennial Millie about QX box. Should I? Well, put me in touch with her. I don't know who she is or what her box is, but I am always open to story ideas if it serves my viewers. Thank you, Ray, for the super chat, super sticker. That means a lot. I appreciate that. Okay, let's look at what the Associated Press said about Trump, which he is laying into. AP wrote this yesterday, quote, Trump's dinner disaster sparks new rules for his campaign. As we know, Kanye came over to Trump's house and brought with him some friends, and Trump said, yay, you're a friend of mine, so any friend of yours is a friend of mine, come on in. So Kanye brings a couple people. Well, one of them it happens to be the very controversial Nick Fuentes, and Trump says he even heard of Nick. He was not familiar with Nick or his views. But because he was in that dinner with Trump, sorry, I've got a gnat flying around me. Because he was in that dinner with Trump, all hell is breaking loose, and the media's in a tizzy. Oh my gosh, this is such a bad look for Trump's campaign. Only 2 weeks after he launched his campaign, he already has a scandal with an anti-Semite white supremacist like Nick Fuentes is known to be. Anyway, here's what the AP writes, quote, Trump's dinner disaster sparks new rules for his campaign. Donald Trump is betting he can win his way back to the White House by reviving the outsider appeal that fueled his success in 2016. But his dinner with a Holocaust-denying white nationalist and a rapper who has spewed anti-Semitic conspiracies is demonstrating the risks of that approach. It uncovers the dangers of his limited campaign operation and leaves the former president subject to stinging criticism from fellow Republicans who increasingly see him as a liability for his party and a lackluster showing in this year's midterm elections. And here's the paragraph Trump is calling out as fake news. It says, quote, in an acknowledgement of the severity of the backlash and an effort to prevent a repeat, Trump's campaign is putting new protocols in place to ensure that those who meet with him are approved and fully vetted. According to people familiar with the plans who requested anonymity to share internal strategy, the changes will include expediting a system borrowed from Trump's White House in which a senior campaign official will be present with him at all times, according to one of the people. So again, fake source or anonymous sources, which we see constantly, and Washington Post does the same thing. New York Times does the same thing. 7 people familiar with the case. 7 officials who wish to be anonymous. We keep seeing this, and the public is just not believing this. They're believing these anonymous sources less and less, especially when Trump is coming out saying, no, those sources are bogus. And look, I went to journalism school and I went through 4 corporate newsrooms, and both in J school and in the newsroom, the bosses would say, please do not use anonymous sources. That, hinders our credibility with the viewers. It is hard for viewers to believe an anonymous source. And the more you use anonymous sources, the more you as a journalist are tempted to just make up an anonymous source one day. Having a hard time tracking sources down, nobody's answering your phone call. Maybe I'll just say it's an anonymous source today to get the job done and meet the news report deadline. So that's just something we're always supposed to stay away from as journalists as much as possible. Now, when anonymous sources can come in handy is when they actually hand you documents that proof or pictures. Your source can remain anonymous. Say, here, I shot this video. Don't say who the video is from, but this video is compelling proof of what went down. That's when an anonymous source is great, and you can keep their name out of it, but they get to expose what actually went down. And we've seen this with Project Veritas. Some of the Twitter insiders initially stayed anonymous. They turned over Twitter documents and kept their names and faces out of it, so that Mark Zuckerberg was thrown for, I'm sorry, not Zuckerberg, whoever was the leader of Twitter at that time The Twitter leadership was thrown for a loop saying, okay, we've got these anonymous sources inside our organization. We don't know who they are. And so, in that way, anonymous source is great because they're just leaking documents that can be verified and proven. But when you're using anonymous sources in the way that the AP did yesterday, that's um, not a good move because it's there's no way to verify that it's true. And look, the bottom line is, look, Trump probably is bothered that controversial people were brought into his dinner meeting. And now there's a tizzy. But look, there's always gonna be a tizzy around Trump, no matter what. And let's be really clear here. No matter who runs as the Republican presidential candidate, there's guaranteed to be a media tizzy around this person, no matter who they are. The media comes up with scandals for every Republican. They will manufacture the scandal if they need to, as they have done for Trump in the past and have been busted for. So there is always going to be a scandal no matter what. So Trump is not too fazed by this, but I guess it was probably annoying, and maybe in the future he would double check who someone is bringing with them. Regardless, he's saying that the AP made this up completely about, oh yeah, Trump is really beefing up security so he can never have another Nick Fuentes in his presence. But my point about there's always going to be a scandal around a Republican candidate. I think Republicans across the nation need to really come to terms with that at this point. This many decades into this scenario where there's always a scandal around a Republican candidate, there always will be. So you need to select a candidate who can handle the scandal. And Trump is definitely someone who could handle the scandal. And he received millions and millions more votes in 2020 than he received in 2016, more than anyone, more than any president in history. It's just that somehow magically Biden received even more. Okay, so I'm saying if you're a Republican, I think Trump running again is probably going to be a good thing. But I know all the media, including Fox News, is saying, oh, Trump's a bad pick. I think that Trump with DeSantis as VP would be a really strong pick. I am just checking your comments, make sure you guys can hear me okay. All right, so gosh, this one gnat just keeps flying around. Okay, I want to jump into Kanye went on Alex Jones' show today, and Alex Jones says, "Gosh, Kanye, I can't believe it. You're not a Nazi. You're not about all this Hitler stuff. So it's unfair that they're saying this about you." And Kanye is like, no, actually, Kanye literally says that he thinks Hitler is pretty cool. I'm wording this very carefully so that people can't edit me out and have me saying that, because Lord knows they do that all the time. So literally, Kanye said that he supports Hitler on Alex Jones' show. And I'm not going to play a clip from that because the last time I played Alex Jones on my YouTube, I almost lost my entire YouTube. No joke. YouTube does not like Alex Jones. And they deleted that video and threatened to delete my whole channel. So, but I have put a link down below to the clip of Kanye saying that he thinks that Hitler is pretty cool. So for me, that's an all-time low for Kanye, and at this point, he's gone off the rails as far as I can tell. And it's actually astounding to me that Kanye, that there's actually a growing movement in the American right that actually is becoming a Nazi apologist. They are falling. I've said this on my Twitter. Some of these right wingers are falling like putty into the hands of the media, who are molding their minds to think this way. The media for the past few years has been saying without evidence that right wingers are Nazis, supremacists, anti-Semitic, without evidence, until more and more right wingers decided to take the mindset that the media said that they had. That is incredibly weak-minded, that your mind is able to be molded by the media. that you can hear the media say something that's not true about you, and you say, how dare you, media? I might as well think the way that you told me to think. Stunning and sad that Kanye's mind was apparently molded by Nick Fuentes, because my understanding, Nick Fuentes has been leading this movement of like, let's actually double check Hitler. Which, look, I'm all about double checking, but the levels of evidence of Hitler's evil actions are profound. And that you would actually think that Hitler might have been a good guy is just mind blowing. Like, oh, but he helped Germany's economy. Okay. All right. So he comes into power shortly after the Great Depression. Or, they went into the Great Depression. I guess it was the stock market collapsed in 1929. Germany throughout the 1920s had a horrible economy. They were printing money out the wazoo, creating inflation because they were trying to pay back their debts for World War I. Anyway, when you become a totalitarian dictator and you understand how economics works, sometimes you can finagle the economy to make things better. But you're at the same time stripping away people's freedoms. The first freedom that he stripped away was the freedom of the press. He actually sent a ton of political opponents to prison shortly after taking power. He shut down the free press, instead started pumping out propaganda. I mean, you guys can go look at. You can look at when he shut down the free press, the newspaper headlines that said "forbot," that them voicing any opinion that strayed from Hitler's opinion was now forbidden. Forbot means forbidden. You can look up the propaganda posters, what Hitler's saying, that all Jews have typhoid now. You better stay away from Jews. They're going to give you typhoid. Kind of like the propaganda about unneedled people now. Ooh, stay away from unneedled people. Don't invite them to Thanksgiving. Hitler was pushing this insanity, locking up his opponents. 1934, a year after he shut down the free press, he has the Night of the Long Knives, where he murders a bunch of his own militia group. So the militants who had his back, he sent troops out to murder his own people. He was turning everyone against each other. And then, of course, the Holocaust. And I personally have interviewed Holocaust survivors. Okay. We've seen the pictures of the skin and bones. We've seen the concentration camps. People have visited the concentration camps and can still smell the death. We've read the books of the personal testimony. I mean, for anyone like Nick Fuentes to be a freaking Hitler apologist, or Kanye coming on Alex Jones today and saying, oh, Hitler might be a good guy. And I know Alex Jones has researched Hitler's Nazi Germany very much, and Alex knows what's up. And for Alex to be the level-headed one here, some people call Kanye the black Alex Jones, but in this scenario, Alex Jones was the level-headed guy. I freaking cannot believe it, you guys. I just cannot believe how minds have been molded by the media. I'm checking your comments right now. So, bottom line, just because the media calls you something doesn't mean you should, be what the media calls you. This is insanity to me. And this is I guess this is a side effect of the increasing fake news, increasing censorship, increasing lack of trust in the media. That now some people in my comments are saying that they are double checking. They're like, actually, all the stories we heard about Hitler, they're saying they don't know if they are true anymore. That anything about Hitler could have been a good guy because, the history books are written by the victors. But in this case, when you look at the actual evidence, I would say Hitler was absolutely a horrific person. And he wrote in his book, Mein Kampf, in the 1920s, years before he ever took power, he wrote down what he wanted to do, the horrors. He was indeed a horrendous racist. And you guys, I know a lot of people really like Kanye. I watched his entire, and I'm all about being a free thinker, but I watched his whole Drink Champs podcast, which was very lengthy, and all the comments he made on Jews on that podcast, and he was going back and forth, and he's like, I don't hate Jews because I am a Jew, but actually I do hate the Jews, but I only hate them because I'm jealous of them because they read their contracts and they stay with their wives and they raise their children and they have their lives together, unlike my people. These are the things that Kanye was saying. Okay, so for people saying no, he has like a more profound point that he's trying to say. He was all over the place on Drink Champs. He's like, no, actually, but it's the Jewish media. Actually, it's just a select group of Jewish um, music producers or music executives. Um, but really, he says Jews in general, they read their contracts, they have their acts together, and he's jealous of that. The same way he's jealous of Drake because Drake is such a success. Literally, these are the things that Kanye said, and you can go back on my YouTube. I broke down the key sound bites from Kanye in that podcast. I broke it down to like a 10-minute thing. Some of the key things that Kanye was saying, he was all over the place. So I don't know what Kanye's deal was, but I know he's kind of a sensationalist, and him crossing the line into supporting Hitler, that's it for me. I absolutely do not support Hitler ever, and anyone who does should try out a concentration camp. Here is RollingStone.com. Kanye to Alex Jones, quote, he likes Hitler. The rapper and virulent anti-Semite sat down with the Sandy Hook conspiracy theorists alongside white nationalist Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes. And it's just so crazy because these people, I understand Nick Fuentes is like a big Trump supporter or something. I haven't followed Fuentes too much, but these people who are Trump supporters, they listen to the media say that Trump is like a supremacist, anti-Semite, a misogynist, and all these things, anti-female, which Trump isn't. If you actually look at Trump's words and actions, he 100% is not those things. Yet there is a group of young men who are not paying attention, it seems, to what Trump actually is, but paying attention to the mainstream media headlines against Trump. And they are mimicking what that media says about Trump rather than mimicking Trump, of actually respecting women and putting them in high places. And these young men actually became the misogynist that Trump never was, and the supremacist that Trump never was. So Trump, in that article, the AP article, he actually said, it says here, quote, so far, Trump has refused to condemn the views of either visitor, despite growing condemnation from his party, including calls for an apology from his former Vice President Mike Pence. In an interview with Fox News Digital Tuesday, Trump said again that he had, quote, never heard of Fuentes, quote, I had no idea what his views were, and they weren't expressed at the table in our very quick dinner, or it wouldn't have been accepted, he said. So that right there sounds like Trump is condemning the views of Fuentes, because Trump is not a Hitler supporter like Fuentes, and he is not a white nationalist like Fuentes. Now, I didn't think white nationalism was a thing until I actually came across some young male right-wing influencers who were indeed white nationalists, including Fuentes, according to their own little social media post, which stunned me and made me see how apparently weak-minded they are, that the mainstream media apparently molded them into being what the media wants Trump to be, but what Trump will never be. By white nationalists, I mean these young guys literally think that white people should break away from the rest of people in America and create their own little white-only nation. It is insanity. And I also, I was invited to CPAC last year, and so I attended that. Fuentes was apparently banned from CPAC, and then showed up anyway. And while speaking in the halls of CPAC, he said that, we need to go back to the 1950s and put women like back in their place in the 1950s. And I'm just here to say that many people in 2022, many women would love a 1950s man. You realize that us living our best lives is not us taking anything away from you. And to go back to the 1950s means that the man needs to man up big time, because these little boys in 2022 are slacking. You know how many of us women would love to be a housewife, except the men around us are far too weak to ever be the man of the house and are forcing the women into more masculine roles. So by Fuentes saying we need to shove women down into a 1950s role, I say that the women of today are so freaking ready for a 1950s role, but it requires a powerful man, a man who comes into his manhood. So to reach a 1950s level, the men need to rise up. Okay, Fuentes? All right. Okay. From what I've seen of Fuentes, I'm not a huge fan of him. Guys, I want to get into Arizona and Wisconsin before we wrap this up. So things are really going down in Arizona. This is the stuff YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. But here's the deal. Each county in Arizona needs to certify its election. There's about 15 counties in Arizona, as I recall, and just around 10 or so had certified their elections. A few of the rural ones had not. Now, Maricopa County, the seat of Phoenix and Scottsdale, makes up 62% of the voters. It is a giant populous county, and that's where all the shenanigans and the anomalies and the glitches happened. Now, these counties around the perimeter, the rural counties, they feel disenfranchised by the glitches. So while Maricopa County is all ready to run on in and certify its election despite all the glitches, we're gonna certify early. These other counties are saying, hold on, we don't feel right certifying our votes when we ran our elections the way they should be run. And we voted for statewide positions we wanted, but because the most important, most populous county screwed up its election, they screwed it up for all of us, because we all tried to vote for the governor we wanted and the senator we wanted. But this debacle that happened in Maricopa County screwed it up for all of us. So these rural counties are pumping the brakes. I have this from justthenews.com saying, quote, Arizona Governor-elect Hobbs ultimatum to county boards: certify her election or face felony rap. And this is the insanity, is that the woman running this election was also the candidate for governor. No conflict of interest to see here, though. Just because the woman in charge of the election is also running for office. But she's giving an ultimatum to these counties that they need to certify their election when they're not ready to, or they're going to jail for felony charges. Just the News covering this and quoting the letter that Katie Hobbs's Secretary of State office sent to Mojave County, one of the counties, saying, we don't want to certify until you guys figure out your glitches. Their letter, Katie Hobbs' office sent this letter saying, quote, if Mojave County does not perform their ministerial duty to canvass your election results, that means certify, to canvass your election results today, we will have no other choice but to pursue legal action and seek fees and sanctions against the board. Our office will take all legal action necessary to ensure that Arizona voters have their votes counted, including referring the individual supervisors who vote who vote not to certify for criminal enforcement under ARS. She names the code. Under the cited statute, an election official who knowingly refuses to perform their election duties is guilty of a Class 6 felony unless a different punishment for such act or omission is prescribed by law. So Katie Hobbs, who's now the governor-elect by a razor-thin margin, is threatening felonies against the counties that don't certify her. She's saying, you better send me into office or you're going to jail. But no conflict of interest to see here. You got to recuse yourself of that position. If you're running for office, you can't oversee your own election against your opponent. This woman was somehow supposed to take an unbiased stance overseeing two candidates, one of the candidates being herself. Okay. So an Arizona state representative, Jake Hoffman, he's a Republican, he told Just the News on Thursday, Katie Hobbs's threats directed at the Mojave County supervisors is a gross abuse of power and highlights the dangerous conflict of interest that exists in allowing her to manage her own election. Hobbs has made it clear that she is willing to exploit every lever of power for her own personal gain, something that should deeply concern Republicans, independents, and Democrats alike. So the Washington Post is covering this today as well. Headline, could election deniers really cost GOP seats by refusing to certify? So here's what's happening. Katie Hobbs' office, the lady who somehow beat Kari Lake while not even campaigning. Every poll showed Kari winning. Kari was omnipresent on the campaign trail. That's a quote from NBC. Katie Hobbs was in her closet, not on the campaign trail, in her basement in the closet. Yet she somehow wins while overseeing her own election. So the Washington Post is saying that these counties that don't want to certify are election deniers and they could cost GOP seats. Now, this is the word now. Katie Hobbs is going to bulldoze through and certify the statewide election regardless. If the counties hold out, some of the counties have already blown past the November 28th deadline to certify. So the statewide certification, as I read, I believe it is December 9th is the very latest that they can certify. Some say it's December 5th, that the state needs to be certified. And Katie Hobbs' office is now saying that if you don't certify your county, we're going to certify the state without you, meaning that the votes from your county won't count. And of course, these rural counties are Republican counties. So if those votes are forfeited, the razor-thin margin by which one congressional candidate won will now be flipped back, and that House seat nationwide for Congress will now go to the Democrats. So if Katie Hobbs bulldozes through and certifies without all the counties, literally Republicans are going to lose another House seat, and that dwindlingly small red wave will become even smaller. So some Democrats are actually pretty excited about this. Los Angeles Times, they wrote an article about the Connect case. By the way, I didn't do a YouTube update on this. There was just so much news to cover, but the whole Connect case and the potential software connection to China. Los Angeles County arrested Eugene Yu, the CEO of that election software company. Guess what? They threw out the charges. They let Eugene Yu go and said, we're going to start this case from scratch because we decided that the investigators from Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office were biased, and we're going to get new investigators. Los Angeles County actually covered their headline, LA prosecutor put on leave over questionable case sparked by election conspiracy theories. Now, the indicting document said that the Los Angeles prosecutors, they spoke with leaders of Connect who confirmed the connection to China. And they laid out exactly their findings, but apparently all of that evidence in detail was biased, and Los Angeles County is starting from scratch now. Super weird, questionable case going on. In this Los Angeles Times article, they have this line that says, Kari Lake, a Republican running for Arizona governor who has raised questions about the state's election integrity without evidence. So there's no evidence No evidence of any integrity issues. Really, guys? Even even amidst the widely covered massive glitches in the endless testimony, Carrie Lake has simply started posting testimony video after testimony video on her Instagram and Twitter of these voters and election workers who had problem after problem, literally major shenanigans that's being thrown in people's faces now. Not to mention, if you watched the testimony at the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors meetings, um, election workers saying that they came back with, I'm not supposed to say this on YouTube, me saying this could get me deleted, but they checked a certain amount of people in to select their person for office. And at the end of the day, there were more papers cast than people who checked in. Okay. I'm wording it weird so the bots don't pick it up. Things like that. Or the people who went to a polling station where there was a problem and they were told, go to this polling station that doesn't have a problem, but they already checked in at this station. Election workers never checked them out when they moved to another station because election workers were not taught how to check someone out. So when they showed up at this next polling station, they were not able to vote there because they were checked in over here. So eventually they ran out of time, threw in the towel, cast a provisional ballot in something called box 3, and it is unknown whether everything was tabulated correctly or not. But nothing to see here. It's without evidence. Carrie Lake's claims are without evidence, according to LA Times. So Katie Hobbs being in control of her own fate is also not a conflict of interest, right, LA Times? So Maricopa County elections officials starting an anti-MAGA PAC in 2021 is not a conflict of interest. Nothing to see here, no evidence. Look away. So the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency putting out details in May of this year, warning election workers about vulnerabilities in the same machine company that is used in Arizona is not evidence. Nothing to see here, even though our own federal agency, CISA, CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, laid out bullets of the actual evidence that they themselves have researched, but nothing to see here. Everything's claimed without evidence. Okay. So we're supposed to ignore all that. And we're supposed to rush to certify Arizona because meeting a deadline is more important than making sure that every legal vote was counted and that anything illegal was both cast out and then prosecuted. But you got to meet those deadlines. So Katie Hobbs is going to file a felony against county supervisors who don't meet the deadline instead of filing felonies against fraudsters. Got it. This all makes sense in 2022, right? Stunning. Stunning. Arizona is a mess and a disgrace to our republic, and it is sad. And I want to finish this up with something out of Wisconsin that is absolutely horrifying. This is an article I think I can bring up on the screen without being deleted by YouTube. PBS covering this. GOP election committee chair in Wisconsin sues to sequester military ballots. The Republican chair of the Wisconsin Assembly, that's the legislature there, their election committee, along with a veteran group and other voters, have filed a lawsuit seeking a court order requiring the sequestering of military absentee ballots in the battleground state. Sequester, for those of you in Rio Linda, means the setting aside in a separate area. They want to pull out the military ballots and look at them separately. Okay, they filed a lawsuit to try to do that. What's wrong with the military ballots? Well, here it is. The lawsuit from State Representative Janelle Brandtjen, filed Friday in Waukesha County Circuit Court, comes after a top Milwaukee County elections official was charged with fraudulently requesting 3 military ballots using fake names and having them sent to Brandtjen as a way to expose vulnerabilities in Wisconsin elections. Kimberly Zapata, deputy director of the Milwaukee Elections Commission, was fired last week and now faces charges of felony misconduct in office and 3 misdemeanor counts of election shenanigans. You hear that? We just had a whistleblower in Wisconsin's election commission. This woman, Kimberly Zapata, is a hero. She's in charge, deputy director of Milwaukee Elections Commission. She noted a vulnerability in which you can forge a name and say it's a military ballot request, and you can get that ballot sent anywhere. Fake ballot that you can then send in. This woman exposed that, had the ballot sent directly to the state representative so the state representative would be alerted to the vulnerability and she could fix it. Because of that, this woman is getting fired and charged. That is a disgrace. She's following the footsteps of Harry Waite, who performed a very similar thing, except it wasn't military ballots, it's anyone's ballot. You can literally request anyone's ballot without their knowledge and have it sent anywhere. Okay. Gaping holes in when it comes in terms of vulnerability and your vote counting. And Wisconsin, again and again, when these holes are exposed, is not fixing them, but prosecuting these people. Harry Waite is facing felony charges. He will likely spend years in prison. And Wisconsin is not fixing its vulnerabilities. This is not just limited to Wisconsin. Other states have very similar systems in place. We need to look at this in every state. How many military ballots are being forged? This is huge news. Why is nobody talking about this? This makes me so sad for the future of our country. The most sacred thing, elections, is just being bulldozed over. Nobody cares. And with that, we got a news alert about YouTube and Google's future. YouTube, here we are. YouTube gives the biggest fact-checking grant ever to Soros-funded group. YouTube just gave $13 million to increased fact-checking, which is really sad because as I learned once I went independent, that fact-checkers are actually phonies. They write fake news themselves. If there is an actual fact verified with evidence and fact checkers don't like it, they will write a fake story and smear and defame you. It happened to me. And YouTube just increased that funding. They then attach the fact checking article to the YouTube article or the Facebook post and use that as evidence to delete your original post. So this is a heads up that more censorship is on the horizon. So guys, the links to my Rumble are down below, as well as my uncensored platform, unified.tv/Ivory Hecker. I have 2 new reports on there. Thank you so much for the super chat. Quote, what's happening in as is evident that's what it says, is evident to all who pay attention. In aeternum veritas at, are you speaking Latin to me? I don't know what you're saying, but I know veritas means truth. So with that being said, we got to wrap up the podcast. I promised the neighbors I'd go to a dinner. You know that prank I played? I'm going to dinner with the neighbors are pranked. So, it's all, we're back to kumbaya. They didn't mind the prank. That's good. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for all the support. It means the world to me. And keep thinking for yourself. Don't fall into the media scams like Nick Fuentes and Kanye have. It's quite sad. And with that being said, we'll talk to you tomorrow. We have Truth Bombs. Gosh, April Moss, CBS whistleblower, is joining me in person for Truth Bombs Can't wait for you guys to see that tomorrow. See you then.